is The Sports Life.
A Cook on the floor, physical up to the basket, and then he dunks it in. Oh.
That's scary. I mean, that'll give kids in the front row nightmares the way he tore the rim off right there, Joey.
Howard with a snap, hands to Judkins, going right side, penetrates the end zone for a touchdown.
Trey Coffin in, top of the key, dribbles left wing. Draws a double team, finds an open Braden Smith from the left corner. It's a 30 ball. Braden Smith, 30 points, a career high.
Some fun moments from the Big Ten. A couple basketball calls, and, of course, Paul Keels as he's calling all the plays for the Ohio State Buckeyes who are trying to find a way to become the national champions. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler and welcome into the Sports Life. And Happy New Year, Dalton.
Happy New Year to you and everybody else out there listening.
You look about the same, by the way.
I sure do, don't I?
You're just awesome. Anyway, we have an interesting show lined up for you here this week. And one of the things that I think people will enjoy is we sort of celebrate the 30th year of head coach Tom Izzo of Michigan State, 30 years as the head coach with the Spartans. The perspective we're going to bring today is a little bit different.
Yeah, most certainly is, and that's going to be a lot of fun to dig into a little bit later on. And we're going to be doing some Big Ten basketball in that spot and towards the top of the show, but there is a lot of football. It is bowl season, right? You got the college football playoff underway. We'll take a complete recap at what all has happened with the Big Ten Conference, and also we'll catch up with our friend Bill Bender about what the Big Ten has done in the college football playoff and beyond.
Well, you ready for the sounds of the week?
Let's do it, and let's go ahead and start off. We mentioned we'll get you some Big Ten basketball here at the top. Illinois guard Kylan Boswell had a triple-double recently against Chicago State. He talked afterwards about what it meant to him to be able to get it done, his thoughts going through those moments, and his overall experience as a newcomer coming from Arizona with the Illini in year one, with the sound coming courtesy of Glenn Kinley.
That was awesome. When Keenan got in, too, I told him I wanted to make sure I got him the last shot for the trip dub. It was just, like I said for TV after the game, it was kind of surreal for me being in the stands and now being in that jersey on the court. But yeah, it was an unbelievable moment for me and my teammates and then the staff believing in me and keeping me in the game to try to go get that.
Kylan, when did you know you were close to the triple-double, and then did you think that coach was going to sit you there? I think maybe a sub came in for you, and then the crowd started to boo a little bit or something.
I saw that I had like 7, so I was focused on the double-double, and then all of a sudden I looked up, and I was like at 9 and 8 with assists and everything. So at that point, I was just asking coach, like, yo, just let me get 2 more assists and 1 more board and get me out the game. But yeah, I thought he was going to sub me at that one point, but the crowd made him change his mind, I heard. Both my freshman and sophomore year, for me, a great experience and everything, but this is by far the most fun I've had on the team. And it's funny, being the young, old vet, but just all of us continuously just growing with one another, and just besides basketball, like all of us enjoy each other. We all hang around each other. And each different days, you can tell on the court that we're all just growing that. And for me, it's been probably the most fun.
Interesting line, the young, old vet.
Well, as college athletics is so turbulent, it probably feels confusing to the players at times on their own rosters where they rank in experience. We talk about Illinois being one of the best Big Ten men's basketball teams right now. Another team in that conversation, Michigan State. We mentioned we're going to have a salute to Tom Izzo a little bit later on in the show. He was asked earlier on this past week about this team, and Fred Heumann of WILX said that you don't seem to be complaining much about this year's squad, which seems to be rare. And so Tom Izzo had this response to the rest of the media.
I like the way they practice. I like the way they act. I like the fact that they're coachable. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that there's not been a lot of drama. Mm-hmm. What does drama mean? Does that mean last year there was a lot of drama? I think guys, coaches learn from past. I think players learn from past, and I got to give Jaden some credit on that, and Trey. I think they've realized what remember we lost 5 or 6 of those games that were real tight, and we lost them all when we were ahead, and we're starting to learn how to win those kind of games and maybe do the things in practice to win those kind of games.
It was interesting, the two he mentioned in that cut, Jaden and Trey. That's Jaden Akins and Trey Holloman. Those are the captains on this year's team. And the one thing that's been really obvious about this group he's got together, number one, Tom Izzo's in a better mood for sure. There's no question about it. But the other thing is he's managed to take 10 players and come up with this amazing rotation that no matter who's out there, it doesn't seem to make much difference. Now, coming up next on Sports Life, we'll look at the Big Ten and what happened during the bowl season. It's all coming up, but first a break.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
Every kid deserves a chance to feel safe, to have their own bed, to be loved and cared for. That's why I love my foster parents. They make me feel like part of the family.
Raise hope and foster dreams for one of 13,000 Michigan children in foster care. Visit michigan.gov/hope for a home or call 855-MICH-KIDS. That's 855-MICH-KIDS. Sponsored by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, CarShield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call CarShield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with CarShield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yay. My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, the Big Ten has had a busy bowl season, including placing 4 teams in the college football playoffs. So, Dalton, as you take a look at it, it just seemed like there were games everywhere.
There most certainly was. And so what we wanted to do with this week's episode of The Sports Life is, if you missed what is going on with Big Ten bowl games, we're going to catch you up to speed. Let's start off with the first one. This was the Rate Bowl between Rutgers and Kansas State. Rutgers got out to a pretty big lead early on. This was the punctuation on that lead for the Scarlet Knights at the time, as Antoine Raymond would punch it in to make the score 41-29. Here's Chris Carlin with the highlight.
Here it's a handoff for Raymond from the tush-push formation, and he runs out left for the Rutgers touchdown, completely untouched. Good call, my friend.
Well, good call, but he didn't have many after that.
I was going to say Kansas State ends up with the biggest comeback in bowl history for Kansas State's football program. They came back from 17 down to win it, and here's what it sounded like, courtesy of Wyatt Thompson, their play-by-play voice, as they had a touchdown in this final call to secure the Rate Bowl.
There's the snap. K-State with the football. They run it with Dylan Edwards. He got a crease. He is on the move. 20, 15, 10, 5. Wildcat touchdown! Wildcat touchdown! What a game! Have a game, Dylan Edwards! Wildcats score with 4:15 to go and lead by a point after being down by 17 earlier in the game. Snap clock is now at 6 and now 5. And another knee. K-State is going to win the football game. They won't have to snap it again. The Wildcats come from 34 to 17 down and win the game 44-41, and they're the Rate Bowl champions. What a victory for the Wildcats as they win for the 9th time this year.
And that's a pretty big number for Kansas State. And even though Rutgers, Dalton, fell a little short in this game, I think overall it looks like they've become stable and competitive, and they're not that team anymore. Everybody go, Rutgers, that's a win. I think they overall had a pretty good year.
I think you're right, and I think they're living up to a new standard that they've built under head coach Greg Schiano, but that's one of the few Big Ten losses so far in the bowl season, kind of heartbreak fashion there for Rutgers. Let's move to one of the Big Ten wins. The USC Trojans didn't have to go very far for their bowl game. They went to Las Vegas, where they battled against Texas A&M. It took a touchdown late in the final seconds. They find Kyle Ford in the end zone. Here's what it sounded like on TV with the play-by-play voice Dave Fleming, and then you'll hear from USC head coach Lincoln Riley afterwards.
Mayava. Looking left, throws a slant, caught, touchdown, Kyle Ford.
Right, yeah. I don't know, in some ways kind of a poetic ending to the season. That felt like just incredibly proud of this group. The resiliency they showed. I told them there's a toughness and a hardness that's developing within this program right now that I think you can look at a lot of different points throughout this season and certainly tonight. And you see that, and there's a lot of excitement about that. Great win. I think this is the biggest comeback in this bowl's history, which is no small feat, especially against a really good football team in Texas A&M.
And those were thoughts from head coach Lincoln Riley. And Dalton, that was a really good win for Southern Cal. But overall, I think that season they had was pretty up and down. And when we welcomed the 4 new members into the Big Ten, the feeling was Oregon would be pretty good. Mm-hmm. Southern Cal would be pretty good, and they weren't at that level.
Well, and I think that encapsulates really what the Lincoln Riley era has been at USC so far. There's such high standards, right? When he comes from Oklahoma and he was taking the Sooners to the playoffs, and it's been up and down, peaks and valleys kind of along that ride. It'll be interesting to continue to watch what happens there with the Trojans. But let's move now to the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Nebraska took on Boston College from the Bronx. Nebraska got the win, their first bowl win in a long time, a decade plus. And for the Huskers, they beat the Eagles 20-15. Ramir Johnson was named the MVP. We're going to bring you one of his touchdowns as called by the voice Greg Sharp. And you'll get to hear from Nebraska head coach Matt Rule afterwards to understand a little bit more about why this was such an emotional deal for Ramir Johnson.
Ramir Johnson set to the right side of Raiola. They'll hand it to him off the left side. Looking and pay dirt. Ramir Johnson. The local boy, the Harlem native, punches it in for Nebraska, and they strike first. It's 6-0 Big Red.
I'll probably get a little bit emotional saying this, so please forgive me, but, you know, Ramir has never allowed anyone really to know what happened to him this year. But, you know, a year ago, he got hurt and missed the whole season. And I sat there with him in my office, you know, as he wept, and the opportunity came to come back this year, and he decided to come back with really no guarantees. His mom was really, really sick for the whole season. I asked him to go home. President Gold intervened and got us in contact with doctors here that were taking care of his mom as she was preparing for hospice. And I asked Ramir to go home, and he wouldn't go home. He had to play that game. He had to stay here with his teammates. Went home on the bye week, asked me not just to tell anyone. He didn't want to be a distraction. Only let Emmett know. And he lost his mom. He lost his mom in November. And, I mean, those are the kids that got me into coaching. Those are the men that keep me in coaching. And he's awesome. And so for him to go out there and do that today, for him to have that run, for us to have to get him out of the stands, to get him to accept the MVP trophy. But it was never about him. So you forgive me for that. But I told him I was going to share that because it's never been about him. He loved his mother. He lost his mother, and he cares about this team. I think this is a fitting end for him. So I hope he wears his pads home on the subway and goes to his apartment, takes that MVP trophy, and I don't know, takes it out tonight somewhere. So,
Dalton, I don't know how Matt Rule got through that. And I might add, Greg Sharp, the voice of the Cornhuskers, well, he's fighting his own battles as he's fighting cancer. And it was great to hear how good he sounded.
Yeah, no kidding. I had the exact same thought as well. So that was a really powerful bit altogether for the Huskers. Let's move to the Big Ten's lone loss against the SEC so far this bowl season. It came in the Music City Bowl. Iowa led Missouri by 10 points, and really a big part of it, getting out to the lead, was thanks to this 100-yard kick return by Caden Wagen, maybe the best returner in all of America, probably the best walk-on you can find in all of America. Here's how it sounded with the voice Gary Dolphin.
This one is 2 yards deep, and Caden's going to bring it out. 10, 15, 20, hops through a hole. 20, 25, gets the corner, turn, still going. He's at midfield, and he's got one blocker in front of him. He may take it to the house. He will. Touchdown, Iowa. Touchdown, Caden Wagen.
So things were flying high for the Hawkeyes for a little bit there in Nashville in the Music City Bowl, but eventually the Tigers would make the comeback to win it 27-24, and the game-winning field goal came late in the fourth thanks to this 56-yard field goal kick by Blake Craig, called by Mizzou voice Mike Kelly.
From the right hash out of the hole to Luke Bauer with 4:42 to play. Good snap, good place. Kick is up. It is good. Blake Craig puts Missouri in front with 4:36 to play.
56 yards? Well, that's pretty good.
It seemed to be pretty easy for him as he splits the uprights, gives Mizzou the win in the Music City Bowl over Iowa. Let's move to Florida, where in the ReliaQuest Bowl, Michigan defeated Alabama in what was a sloppy start to the game for the Tide. Multiple turnovers in the first few moments, but Michigan hangs on to win it 19-13. We'll bring you the touchdown catch of Fred Morris called by Doug Karsh in the final call as well.
Davis Warren in a shotgun with two receivers split to either side, back to pass. Davis going to fire, and it's caught! Fred Moore! Touchdown, Wolverines! All right, here we go. Two receivers split to either side for Jalen Milroe. Jam Miller in the backfield. Milroe's got the snap, back to pass. Bails out of there to the left. Michigan pass rush is coming. He's going to throw it up, and it's incomplete! Falls short of the end zone, nobody there, and the Wolverines defense has come up with their third and most important fourth down stop of the game, and Michigan is going to win the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Well, they did win it, and you know the one thing, when they beat Alabama, I kept thinking, obviously this wasn't a vintage Michigan football team, right? Mm-hmm. But just look at their last two games. They beat Ohio State and Columbus. They beat Alabama. And you're going, wow, maybe they're not so bad.
Not a bad turnaround for Sharon Moore and the Wolverines, but it's also funny that 2024 started with Michigan beating Bama in the college football playoff, and it also ended with Michigan beating Bama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. So 24 was a year for the Wolverines. Let's go ahead and move now to the Sun Bowl. Louisville and Washington battling in a close one late. Washington scores with 9 seconds left and makes it 35-34. They just have to kick the extra point to tie it up, but they get excited and say, let's go win the ball game. They go for two. It backfires. Here's the Louisville call of denying the 2-point conversion with the voice of the Cardinals, Paul Rogers.
Here's the game. 9 seconds left. Snap to Williams. Looking, throwing, end zone. Batted away! Watts knocked it down! They had an open receiver in the corner of the end zone, and Watts jumped high and batted it down with 9 seconds left.
Well, maybe you don't go for 2. Hindsight's perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly right. But nonetheless, a great game for Washington, just coming up so close and just a bit short in that one. Let's move to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl here, where Illinois defeats South Carolina 21-17. We're going to bring you a Josh McCray 60-yard run with the voice of the Illini, Brian Barnhart, and you'll get to hear from Brett Bielema afterwards with the sound coming courtesy of Jeremy Werner.
They send Dixon in motion. They give to McCray up the middle. Yes, sir. 25-30. It's a foot race. 50, hold on to the ball. 40, 35, and tagged down at the 25-yard line. How do you like that? The game is over. Yes. Victory, Illinois. In the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, the Illini are the champions of the Citrus Bowl. They have defeated South Carolina 21-17.
I think this is fulfilling because the part that I've enjoyed now more as a coach, and when Josh gave me this opportunity, Chancellor Jones there today, when I was relieved of my last college coaching job, I knew that I wanted to prove what I could do, right? And I want to do it my way. I want to do it in a way with a group of people that I thought could do things. And now to do this and to have a 10-win season, and at Illinois, we often get, well, we haven't ever done this, or they want to go back to certain times. And I always say, that's great. Let's turn the page. Let's move forward. And I think today is a big step in that direction.
So I agree with him, Dalton. And I also think what Coach Bielema has done since he arrived in Champaign has been pretty good.
It's really remarkable when you think about it. Let's move to the college football playoff for a moment. We did not bring anything from the first round. Penn State, of course, beat SMU. Ohio State defeated Tennessee. But let's go ahead and look at the quarterfinal round, where Penn State defeated Boise State 31-14 in the Fiesta Bowl. Here's some of the highlights, including the final call with the voice of the Nittany Lions, Steve Jones.
Singleton to the right of Aller, 2 near side, 1 to the far side. Now they bring motion by Wallace toward us. It's going to be Singleton left side, gets the block to the 45-50. There he goes! He is gone! 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Penn State! Tight formation. They'll just quarterback sneak it, I think. Takes it, puts the knee down. Penn State, Fiesta Bowl champions. Next stop, the Orange Bowl.
Steve Jones, pretty jacked there. Well, it's good that they have a little break there. He needs to rest his voice.
He sure does. Meanwhile, you could maybe say some of the same for the Buckeyes, because Ohio State, as Chris Fowler described it at one point during the television broadcast, was putting on a crimson avalanche in the Rose Bowl on Oregon. Just absolutely demolished the Ducks. They win at 41-21. Here was one of the signature runs from Travion Henderson in the Buckeye win, called by the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels.
Yeah, Henderson to the backfield with Howard, gets the snap on first down. Henderson running right side, hits his own 35, gets to the 40, down the right sideline to the Oregon 40, goes Henderson to the 30 of the Ducks, to the 20, to the 10, to the house. Travion Henderson right around the right side, and his 9th rushing touchdown of the year. That one's 66 yards to the end zone. And how about this Ohio State offense, who's jumped in front of Oregon 30-0.
And it wound up being a 1-point 34-0. In Dalton, I didn't really watch a lot of the game on television, but I did walk by my TV when Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were having a little stand-up. And Fowler, the play-by-play guy, looks at Herbstreit, the analyst, and says, with the score 34-0, well, Oregon does have to come out in the second half, right?
I tell you what, that was not on my bingo card. That was shocking.
Well, shocking is a good word for it. Well, when we come back, we're going to try to sort some of these things out, look at the past, look ahead, with Bill Bender from the Sporting News. It's all coming up in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
That ought to do it. Totally energy efficient.
Oh no, not again. This time, we're getting help.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the battle of energy efficiency improvements. In this corner, Mr. I can save money and do it on my own. And in this corner, Miss Let's Get It Done Right with some help. Fight!
Or you could just go to avoidenergydrama.com. From sealing your home to helpful loan options, you'll find all the tips and tools you need to stop wasting energy and stay comfortable. Avoidenergydrama.com. Brought to you by Michigan Saves.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Team here along with Dalton Shetler. And don't forget, Auto Owners Insurance, simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you. And we're trying to figure out who's going to be the national champion in college football. And to join us to try to put some, some perspective on what we've seen in bowl games and in the playoffs, we've asked Bill Benner to join us from Sporting News. And Bill, by the way, welcome in. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks so much for having me on, Will. Another year and getting into it. These playoffs have been fun. It's been a long season. It's still going, but we'll get through it. Before you know it, it'll get done in time for March Madness. Who knows?
That would be good. Well, let's start off by talking about Ohio State. We spent a lot of time talking about them after they lost to Michigan, like what happened. But what's happening now, and after two games in the playoff, they've been unbelievable. 42-17 over Tennessee, and they were shocking against Oregon, putting up the first 30-some points, winning that one 41-21. So I think I'll start off by asking you, what is going on with Ohio State?
I think it's a case of the worst thing that possibly could have happened. They were still alive. And they've just knocked out Tennessee and Oregon. Those games were, writers, as you know, us journalist types, we like a good blowout because it means we're done writing. You're done writing before the game's over. And both of those games were done writing before the game's over type games. And I think Jeremiah Smith is the most unstoppable player in the playoff. They've played with an aggressive edge. They are going to have a challenge with Texas. Texas is a good football team with a good defense, but they're playing free, and everything that happened in Michigan that went wrong, it's over. They've moved on, and you got to give Ryan Day credit for making that happen.
Well, and so much of the conversation after the loss to Michigan for Ohio State was What was the game plan necessarily about in that game against the Wolverines? It felt like they kind of handcuffed themselves when they've got all these luxury cars on the outside. They didn't quite use them, and now you're seeing them throw it over the top. You're seeing them use the weapons. Do you have any explanation for the shift back to kind of reaching its full potential for Ohio State football?
I think they got caught in, like a little bit of ego against Michigan. They wanted to show how tough they were. They ran the ball up the middle 17 times for 41 yards at Michigan's two best players, one of whom, Mason Graham, who I think is going to be a top 10 pick. And, credit Michigan. They played well that day, and they played well in their bowl game as well. So, a little bit of a turnaround for Sharon Moore there. But, yeah, I just think they got back to Ohio State got back to who they were. What are they? Getting the ball out on space. Like you mentioned, they've got 3 NFL receivers. Darnell Tate, Emeka Egbuka, and Jeremiah Smith. I'm not exaggerating, and you're going to see this talk for the next week. He's a freshman, but he's not just a freshman. It's like watching T.O. to me. He would possibly be the number 1 pick in the draft this year, and he's got 2 years left to play. So you get the ball to your best players. That's simple at every level, and they're doing a good job of that with Will Howard right now.
Well, we talk about Ohio State being dominant. Penn State, about the same thing, 38-10 over SMU. Boise, not much better. Penn State 31, Boise 14. So it appears that those guys are on somewhat of a roll.
Yeah, they are. And you got to credit James Franklin. Yeah, a lot was made about how easy the path was and all the kinds of things, but we would pounce on James Franklin had they lost. So they've taken care of business. They threw the ball well in the first quarter against Boise State. Tyler Warren had a huge game. Obviously, he's a mismatch for anybody. And they ran the ball well with Singleton and Allen. Their offensive line's playing very well. Their offensive line's probably a little underrated given who's in this playoff. So I think the Nittany Lions will have their chance as well. And I think you get them into the Orange Bowl. They're going to play the winner of Georgia-Notre Dame. And they're going to have a swing in that game because they're playing well. They will need Abdul Carter. He left the game with a undisclosed injury. They better hope he's okay, though. He's a difference maker for them. But, yeah, the Big Ten got 2 teams in the semifinals, and the SEC has a chance to get 2 teams in the semifinals. And is that when we start calling it the SEC Big Ten Invitational? We just wait till they get to the round of 4?
Well, you kind of lead me to the next point. For the Big Ten to have half of the Final Four of the college football playoff, that feels like something they can really pound their chest about. And then you take a look, too, at, you mentioned that Michigan beats Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. The SEC had so much chatter ahead of this that Alabama should be in instead of Indiana. Like, what are we doing? There was all those conversations, and then for Bama to lay an egg, the SEC to kind of lay an egg in absolute entirety or totality, maybe the best way to put it, where there's so many teams that are dropping. This feels like this is a win for the Big Ten this bowl season.
Yeah, they've had a great bowl season. Illinois. How about that exchange between Bielema and Beamer? I couldn't stop laughing about it. I know it was poor sportsmanship or whatever, but I'm still allowed to laugh. But it was they've had an outstanding bowl season, and I think it goes to show that the top half, for all the talk about the 18-team Big Ten, I think it helps to play different styles during the year. When you're playing Washington one week, then you got to go to Spartan Stadium the next week, and in USC and Oregon, and I think it's helped diversify the league in terms of styles of play. But they had a fantastic bowl season. I thought Michigan looked good. Illinois won 10 games with Brett Bielema. How about that? That deserves a lot of credit. Nebraska won their first bowl game in forever. So it is a good season for the Big Ten. They can cap it off with back-to-back national titles potentially after Michigan won one last year. So things are going well, no question.
Well, I know Indiana got beat by Notre Dame 27-17 in the opening round, but if you could, Bill, just for a second, can we reflect on the amazing year they had?
Yeah, some people will say, well, it was their schedule. Well, yeah, but it's Indiana, guys. Curtis Rourke had a fantastic year. I was there when they played Ohio State, and the way I put it, and I don't know if I talked to you guys about it since, it just was the difference between a playoff team and a national title team. And that's okay. You know, they had a wonderful year under Kurt Cignetti. They used the transfer portal well. He played the schedule he played. They did beat Michigan. The thing in the big games for them was they had trouble running the ball against the Wolverines, against the Irish, against the Buckeyes. But, I mean, there's about 10 other Big Ten schools that'll tell you it's hard to run the ball in Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and they've had that problem for about 50 years. So I think it was a fantastic season. I like his way. A lot gets made of, you know, he is a quote machine. But when I went to his press conference after the Ohio State loss, you kind of saw a guy that self-aware, knows the flaws of his team, can talk through a football game. And somebody told me, source told me, he's not going to beat himself. The only way you're going to beat him is with better players. And that's precisely what happened this year.
I'd be curious to ask you, too, because we've talked about this a little bit actually before we started rolling the tape, Bill, that it feels like the playoffs have been going and going and going, and we're still just getting ready for the semifinal round. I didn't think, I made the comment to you, that in America we could ever have football fatigue or you could ever have too much football, but do you sense there's a little bit of football fatigue with the college football playoff right now?
It's an interesting concept. I'll say, because it's hard for me from two angles. One, from the professional angle, yeah, it's a long season. I'm like, man, I still got 3 more weeks. But, the long hours and the long weeks that you put in as a football writer, but that's part of the job. I think they could start these playoffs right after the regular season. What hit me yesterday, and if Oregon had a gripe, it could be this. We hadn't played since December 7th. We went out against a team that had played 2 weeks ago. And I thought Oregon looked slow, if that makes sense. They looked like a team that hadn't played in 4 weeks. So why can't we just start these things right away? I would ditch the conference championship games. I really would. If you want to expand this to 14 or 16, go right ahead. But let's skip the conference championships. Let's do what D2 and D3 and, the other divisions do. Start it right away. So that first round, December 7th, second round, 14th, third round, 21st. Skip a week, play the title game on January 1st. How hard can it be? That would be, to me, and then you're not fighting with the NFL down the stretch.
Okay, here's the big one. Could the Big Ten win another national title this year?
Well, I think Ohio State's the team to beat right now. Now that can change. Texas has got a really good defense. But, yeah, I think Ohio State's really in position to do it. They're the most talented team. They're playing the best right now. As long as Will Howard doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, but, it's when you go to the Cotton Bowl, Jerry World, you're playing in Texas. It's a de facto road game. They're going to have to be ready to go. There will be a lot of Ohio State fans at that game, but I think they will. To answer your question, I'm not going to duck the question. I think Ohio State's going to end up winning it all. That would be Michigan last year, Ohio State this year, and maybe another Big Ten. Maybe we're on to an era of Big Ten dominance. Who knows?
Well, that would be okay, and I think Ryan Day hopes you're right.
Yeah, and, the SEC will have their say. Texas getting in there. This is a really good Texas team. I was there when they beat Michigan earlier this year. Defense is really good. Quinn Ewers is up and down. They just I don't know if you guys sense the same thing. It seems like Texas just hasn't put it all together somehow, like Ohio State has the last couple weeks. But if Texas can put it all together in a 4-quarter game, they can absolutely beat Ohio State. I think the best they looked was at 4 quarters they played at Michigan.
Yeah, and I'm thinking when you talk about Ohio State, Bill, maybe the greatest thing that's happened to the Buckeyes is they're trying to win 2 more. Maybe that loss to Michigan has been the catalyst that just changed the landscape.
I think so, because, they're kids, and you can use that as momentum. And, the way these playoffs work, I was at the Ohio State-Tennessee game, and for us, there's those moments of, wait, what? And one of those was walking down on the field after, and Ohio State players were holding roses, and you're thinking, oh, yeah, they clinched a Rose Bowl berth, even though they didn't beat Michigan or win the Big Ten. Everything's changed. It does feel a little bit like the NFL playoffs when you catch that hot team in the NFL playoffs, and I know that's happening right now with Ohio State.
Well, Bill, again, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us, and maybe we can visit when this whole thing is done and see what we think when it's all done.
I think we will. Thank you so much for having me on. You guys have a great New Year, and I'll talk to you soon.
When we come back with more of the Sports Life, a salute from a different angle for a guy who's going into year 30 of coaching basketball as a head man in the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, this season, Michigan State's Tom Izzo is celebrating his 30th year as the head coach of the men's basketball program, which is the topic of this week's cover story. Now, during Tom Izzo's time at MSU, he has become the all-time winningest coach at a Big Ten school. And most likely by season's end, he will have passed Bobby Knight when it comes to owning the most conference wins ever at a single Big Ten school. Well, let's see. We can also add that he is in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. He has been the National Coach of the Year 8 times, has directed Michigan State to 16 Big Ten titles, along with 26 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances, which, by the way, is an all-time record in the sport of college basketball. And he's also made 8 Final Fours, and of course he led MSU to the national title in 2000. So of those 30 years as Michigan State's head basketball coach, there has been one individual who has been with Coach Izzo for 11 of those seasons. That one individual is Austin Thornton. He has been with Coach as a player, a grad assistant, a video coordinator, and now an assistant coach, which puts him in somewhat of a unique position. So, If anyone can make a judgment on Tom Izzo's contribution to Michigan State basketball, it would have to be Austin Thornton.
Well, on Michigan State men's basketball, he's taken it to new heights that obviously were unprecedented in terms of consistent success. Coach Heathcote, before him, obviously they won a national championship in 1979 with Magic Johnson, but there wasn't the consistent level of success year in and year out. Talented, unbelievably talented players, different style of play, different time of play, but there wasn't the if the Michigan State men's basketball program doesn't make it to a Final Four, it's a failure of a season expectation. And so that's where I think Coach Izzo deserves so much credit, and his first group of dudes that came through here deserve so much credit for building the bedrock for the program that we have here today, and that has kind of set the precedent for the last 25 years of success and what the goals are year in and year out, which are very realistic goals year in and year out. It's always been win a regular season Big Ten championship, win a Big Ten tournament title, and get your butt to a Final Four and see what happens in a Final Four. And that's it's wild to say that out loud, and it's wild to even last year. Last year's team made an NCAA tournament, won the first round of the NCAA game. And we get beat by a number 1 overall seed team in North Carolina. And for 99% of other schools out there, that's an incredibly successful season. and so that's where I think Coach Izzo just deserves an enormous amount of respect. Now, in regards to Michigan State University, in regards to the state of Michigan, he's a mainstay, and I joke with him all the time. I say, Coach, whenever you decide to hang him up, and whenever you decide to call it quits in regards to coaching basketball, please run for governor, because I think you'd do a great job. I think the state of Michigan would vote you in, and it'd be fun to see someone go in there and kick ass and take some names and help get the state back in a good place.
When Thornton was a Spartan player from 2007 to 2012, he played on teams that won 4 Big Ten titles, went to the NCAA tournament every season, advanced to 2 Final Fours, and 1 national title game, which came in 2009. So we were curious as to what is the Izzo magic.
Well, I was very fortunate to play on 3 teams that won Big Ten regular season championships. Very fortunate to play on 2 teams that went to Final Fours. Very fortunate to play on 1 team that played a national championship. And then the last one, my senior year, when we had a chance to not only win the regular season championship, but also win the Big Ten tournament title. Everyone just 1,000% knew whatever their role was on the team and was okay with that role and was excited about exceeding and being successful in their role. And safe to say that most of us probably wanted to have an expanded role, and that's totally fine if you want, but you can't have your expanded role before you're really, 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 really good at your current one. And that's where that team was just, everyone knew what they were bringing to the table. Everyone was very consistent with what they wanted to get done. A lot of really good players that could have had expanded roles or higher roles at maybe other schools or other places or lesser programs, but because we really wanted to win, and that's probably the word that you're looking for in terms of the magic, was the goal was to win. But everyone understood what their job was, everyone understood what their role was, and was excited about that, and still driven, still wanted more, still wanted to compete, still wanted to get be a better player in all those aspects, but was bought into what we're trying to do here, which is ultimately win games.
So as we talk about Izzo and his accomplishments, we're also guessing that over 30 seasons as a head coach, he has made some adjustments along the way, which led us to ask Austin if the players have changed over the years.
That's a great question, Will. And as someone who's been around this program for a long time, I know that you have seen Coach Izzo in his element. And then now you see we call him the older, wiser, and the older, the grandfather version of Coach Izzo. And I mean that in a total positive way. Coach Izzo has adjusted his coaching style, and to his credit, he was able to coach a generation of players that were raised differently, that were coached differently, that did not come up with a social media aspect of their upbringing like this group has. They didn't come up with the 500 different recruiting services. They didn't come up with the 400 different AAU teams. It was a different time of athletics, and it was a different time of basketball. And now we're coaching a group of athletes, of student athletes, who just, their communication style is different. Now, Coach is still very, very firm, and Coach still gets on guys, and he still brings energy each and every single day. But the manner in which he's been able to adjust, I think, needs to be applauded a lot more than it really has been, because he's done a wonderful job of still maintaining his youthful joy, still maintaining his willingness to coach and to teach and to spend time with guys, yet do it at 69, 70 years old versus 40, 45 years old. And the guys still react very well to coach, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for that.
So now there is this season, the 2024-25 campaign. And this time around, Michigan State is playing some good old Tom Izzo team basketball, and looks like it could make a run at another Big Ten title. So as a final question for MSU assistant coach Austin Thornton, we ask if he could see any similarities between this year's Spartan group compared to the title teams he played on.
Yeah, I really do. And again, last year, it's history doesn't always repeat itself, but sometimes it does rhyme. And in regards to last season, hindsight always being what it was, perhaps maybe there was too much of expectations put on that group, because that group really hadn't won at a super high level, comparatively speaking to what Michigan State standards are. We did make a Sweet 16 the year prior, but we haven't won a Big Ten championship since Cassius' senior year. And so there wasn't really that history of winning with that group. Now, rewind 15 years ago, my redshirt junior year, when we were coming into the season, preseason number 1, number 2, depending upon the poll that you were looking at, and then had a really tough year, barely made the NCAA tournament. That group of guys had just come off back-to-back Big Ten championships, back-to-back Final Fours, and potentially that previous season, if Kalen hadn't ruptured his Achilles, we all felt that we were probably going to win the national championship that year. So that was a proven group of players coming back, and then for whatever reason, just the kind of season got derailed. But then going into my redshirt senior year, same type of deal. There were some guys who had already won at a super high level that were able to lead and bring on the younger guys, the super talented group of freshmen that we brought in the year prior, the super talented group of freshmen that came in that year, and we were able to help them get better as the season progressed while simultaneously having proven leaders. That's probably the biggest difference between that year's team and then last year's team. Now, with this group, we're super talented, we're super deep. Like we talked about earlier, there's just simply very little, if no, drop-off when we go from our starting group to our reserve group, our bench group. More times than not, I think, if I'm not mistaken, our bench has outscored every single team, every single game, and there's been times where our bench has outscored our starters in and of itself, which is awesome. I mean, that's fantastic, and that's kudos to Coach Izzo, that's kudos to Coach Woj and to Sadi and JB and TK, and bringing in the right guys and helping them kind of stick to the mantra of strength in numbers, strength in numbers, strength in numbers. Ultimately, what's the goal? Ultimately, the goal is to win. And if you have a well-balanced team, it's just very, very difficult to guard.
A unique salute to head coach Tom Izzo of Michigan State through the eyes of Austin Thornton, somebody who's been with Coach in more different positions than anybody else. Player, grad assistant, video coordinator, and now assistant coach. Back with more of the Sports Life and our parting shots in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, chance you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Anybody ready for a burger?
I'm State Fire Marshal Rich Miller, reminding everyone to think safety first when it comes to outdoor grilling, whether it's charcoal or gas. Never overload your grill with food. Excess fat and grease will create large flames. Grill outdoors and never inside or in a garage. Never leave a grill unattended and always keep a fire extinguisher nearby. For more tips on safe grilling, visit the Bureau of Fire Services website at michigan.gov/BFS.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit InsureKidsNow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Fun show. A little salute to head coach Tom Izzo as he's going through his 30th season as MSU's head man. Well, it was fun to talk to Bill Bender about what all this bowl stuff means to the Big Ten and a little flashback to some of the great moments of the bowl season as it's, I think, eventually, Dalton, going to be over.
At some point.
At some point, it's going to be over. So, in terms of parting shots, what do you got?
Well, I wanted to take a moment to reflect a little bit more about what we've seen from the Big Ten in this bowl season. We talked with Bill Bender a little bit about how great this has been for the Big Ten with all the noise and chatter heading into the postseason about how much better the SEC is, how they're more deserving of these spots. Why is Indiana in the playoff? A lot of those questions look kind of foolish now because in Big Ten SEC matchups right now, there's been 5 of them. One of them was Ohio State blowing the doors off of Tennessee in the college football playoff. You also had USC beating Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. You had Michigan beating Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. And Illinois also defeating South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. The lone SEC win against the Big Ten was Missouri beating Iowa in the Music City Bowl, where they had to come from 10 behind to make that even possible. But the Big Ten is 4-1 against the SEC in bowl games this year in head-to-head matchups, and that looks really great for the Big Ten Conference.
And a shot to maybe repeat as national champions.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to go back to our review of some of the thoughts of Austin Thornton about Tom Izzo, the head man at Michigan State. His first year, Dalton, as a head coach was 1995-96. That was his first season. And just for fun, I thought, who else was coaching in the Big Ten then? Well, at Penn State, you had Jerry Dunn. Indiana, Bobby Knight. At Iowa, Dr. Tom Davis. At Michigan, Steve Fisher. Clem Haskins, who was still at Minnesota. Wisconsin had Dick Bennett. Illinois, Lou Henson. Purdue, Gene Cady. Ohio State, Randy Ayers. And Northwestern, Ricky Birdsong. And it's interesting, none of those people are coaching anymore.
That's unreal.
But Tom is going strong, man. He's going strong. Well, with that wraps up our show for this week. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We should also note that you can find us wherever you find your podcasts like SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple. And make sure to check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Live is produced by Dalton Shetler and assisted by Owen Cronin. Our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton Shetler, I'm Will Tiemann, and thanks for your time.